Hey everyone, welcome back to the Product Pivot. I'm Santi with my incredible co host Megan. To give a little recap about this podcast, we share real stories from a variety of different folks in the product management space and in the product world. We get to hear real stories of their pivots in, the things that they do, and all of that fun stuff. So today, I'm very biased, but I'm so excited to have a good friend of mine and a phenomenal product leader, Alyx, on. And I'm going to flip it over to her so she can give an introduction.
Oh, that's very, very humbling. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you both, and I am looking forward to digging into a lot of the exciting reasons why I'm in product, and also I think we'll probably talk about some hard things as well, and some of the not so pleasant parts of the job, and just being in different industries that I have. And so, yeah, really excited to get into all of that with you both, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I just want to say I am a little excited to talk about some of the not so pleasant parts of product management because we all see the highlight reels on LinkedIn and we hear everyone talk about how awesome it is and it has this like view of being the best role in tech. No one talks about the dark side. So I'm excited to talk about the dark side a little bit. Just saying.
Well, let's
I think
go.
it's part
Let's
of
go.
our Yeah, like I think it's part of our whole vibe here, right? Like we're positive people. We're all, we're all cool here, but we do need to talk about the not so positive things, right? Because at that point we're not doing necessarily a service about talking only about the good, to not bring some of that darker stuff to light. So we want to help people have informed decisions on what they're
Yeah.
doing, what they're doing. So I can go ahead and kick us off with our favorite question to ask all of these folks that we have on the podcast. And Alyx, what was your journey like pivoting into product?
I'm glad you used the word pivot because it definitely was a pivot. I certainly did not plan to end up in this industry or this discipline. I think, however, the entry into product was very much a poetic one for me, and I say that to romanticize it because it is, in my opinion, a romantic story because I fell in love with business at a young age because of my parents. I had two entrepreneurial parents, and I saw them tackle so many different difficult things that were not taught in school or growing up for that matter. And I became quite fascinated with business at a young age, and so starting my own creative agency, I touched marketing, I touched sales, I touched brand. And, I think the culmination of all of that was I was having a random conversation with a boss of mine at the time, and somebody came over to us and he said, "Oh, she's the product person." And I remember not really understanding what that meant. I was like, "Are you calling me a sales rep? Because literally I'm the creative director." So, and then no disrespect to the salespeople, but then I went, "Oh, okay, fine, that's interesting." And then it just kind of started happening more and more. And I decided that I was a little bit fed up with, sort of my career and always not understanding where I wanted to go and how to sort of utilize and leverage all of the skills that I'd learned across all these various disciplines. Um, and I think that's kind of how my journey into product began because I started to figure out how can I design things that are replicatable. That was one big challenge for me as a business owner, very young. I didn't have the manpower, the resources, or the finances to hire these big, beautiful teams to make these things happen. And so it was really out of that challenge of like how to solve these problems in a repeatable way. I mean, at the time it was sort of I guess, more cost effective way. And that kind of got the unconscious side of my brain ticking and starting to figure out how does this work. And then I'm really curious. I That is my biggest, I think, strength in my professional life, is that I have this insatiable curiosity. And so I started following other product people's journeys, and I was like, well, what is this product thing? And the thing of product is for me, you know really at the intersection of solving problems, but making that make emotional sense to who you're solving the problem for. And that's kind of how I ended up here. And I ended up in tech because I thought it was the most sensible and useful thing for me to address many of the problems that I solve today for clients and teams. So, yeah, I think that's how I ended up here.
So for those who don't know, can you share a little bit about like what you're doing today as well?
Yeah, sure. So I can't give away too much on this specifically, but I'm working on a really, really incredible sports brand that, I can tell you it's in the golf space, so that's something I can give away. And I have given Santi a little bit of a sneak peek, and yeah, I'm really excited about it because I am a big sports junkie. And I learned to play golf not long ago, but it's always been a sport that I've respected and always sort of aspired to. And I think being able to now work in that space on that product that I'm really really excited about, and there's more to come in terms of announcing what's going on specifically, but that's what I'm working on. It's tech focused, but it's also really really meeting customers where they are, and then translating those experiences into physical spaces, which is so cool. So yeah, so I'm working on that, and I just restarted my consultancy. So that's more nerve wracking than I thought it was going to be, but in a really good way, because I've also become a lot more vocal about the good and the bad and the ugly of product, and making things a little bit more accessible to people. I think in the way of information and knowledge sharing is really really critical, and demystification is so important to me. I remember feeling at one point like, I have no idea what this means, and I am not going to ask because everybody else seems to know what this means, so let me just be quiet. And at one point i asked I asked a friend of mine who's really, really curious and always asks questions. I was like, how do you not feel stupid asking questions? And she was like, oh, I feel stupid, but I rather know. So it just ask. And I think that for me really, really started a fire when it comes to just getting rid of the smoke and mirrors and let's talk real. Not every single product person is going to touch big tech, and that is okay. So I think the aspiration a lot of the time when it comes to product is we have to get to Amazon, and we have to get to Meta, and we have to get to, and that is simply not true. There are exceptional product people doing exceptional things across multiple industries, and you will probably never hear about them. And that is okay. And I think that, yeah, it's important to still arm them with the knowledge and the tools and the support and the access to solving the problems that they need to solve in their different spaces. So I think for me, that is the sort of thing I'm really, really excited about. And I'm looking forward to the reception so far to the things I've been putting out. And, it's in the ways of articles and frameworks and things like that have been really, really positive. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So that's, yeah, a little bit of what I'm working on today, right
Oh,
now.
that's good. That's good. I love it. No, I think we should talk about like the things that you're working on for sure because people that are listening will be curious. So it's great.
Yeah.
Santi, I feel like you were like fist pumping there. I feel
I
like you
was
should
because she's just being so humble. Like Homegirl dropped
Yes.
the best article I read on prod ops the other week and was like, I'm just gonna put
Oh,
it out there, see what happens. And I was
oh,
like,
wow. Thank you.
that should be published everywhere. Like, what are you talking
Thank you.
about?
Wow. No,
It was
thank you.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah. And I
Thank
think that's what the folks in this space need when we think about product, like early PM, early career PMs, aspiring PMs, even just PMs in general. Like they do need a way to be able to read and digest information that makes sense, is not overwhelming, and it's applicable to different scenarios. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that product's just going to be different depending on the space you're in. And you do a really good job of kind of distilling like those foundational elements of product and kind of how we operate at those like not standard ways, but some of the things that are pretty consistent across those spaces, but also in a way that it's like yeah, here's some other things that you can chew on, and it gets the person or the reader thinking like, how would this apply to my situation? And you just
Mhm.
do it in just such a clear cut way. So folks, follow Alyx.
I was about to
Be-
say,
Thank
do you have a newsletter
you.
that
Plug.
we can
Yeah, I started writing. Laura, that's not true. I've been writing for a long time, but I decided to allow the world to have eyes on the writing that I do. And so I'm published on Medium at the moment, and I am also now going to just add those articles to my Substack that I'm very new to as well. Um, I in my personal life, I'm so incredibly quiet. And so I think at some point or another that started to sort of like drift into my professional life. And I was like, that's fine. I'm just going to stay off of social media. I can't, because I really don't, it's a lot of energy, content creation, which is
is
why I lift my hat to the both of you, because tempting as it might be to start a podcast or to, do things like that, it's a lot of work. And a lot of people still, I think, don't understand the level of attention to detail and planning that it takes, and we haven't gotten to the execution yet, and the upkeep and the follow through. So I lift my hat to both of you for doing this. And yeah, so I'm currently on Substack and Medium, and I'm working on staying consistent. One article was released yesterday, and I'm talking a little bit more openly, like I said, about the not so clear parts about this thing called product that we do. And I'm trying to get tactical with it as well, because I think one of the things that's missing is we have a lot of discourse sometimes, and the discourse doesn't go any further. And I really am someone who needs to learn by looking at how different things are applied, and observing that. I'm quite a visual learner, and having a conversation is wonderful, and it can be stimulating in that period of time or that moment. But what happens afterwards, when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm stuck?
yeah.
Give me something. So yeah, so Medium's there, and I'm working on being a lot more visible, like I said, and Santi's good at holding me to
That's
account.
great.
Appreciate it.
You're
No,
doing
I think
great. You're
that's
doing
great.
great, honestly. Like it's been such a I know we talked about this too. We were on a call for several hours one day and we were talking about all kinds of things. And I think slowly after then you like eventually started moving into more of this like visible space
Mhm.
and getting your thoughts and voice out there, and the product community is better for it. So
Thank you.
hats off to you because it's a huge jump. I For anyone that doesn't know this, I used to have my mom read my LinkedIn posts before I would post them because I was so nervous when I first started.
I love that. I love that. That's
We
amazing.
all been there.
Oh,
Content
that's
creation is
awesome.
scary.
It
I
is.
feel like it in general is scary just getting your voice out there, because like I couldn't start posting until I got like in a cohort of people that
Mm,
were doing it at the same time, and like we could all scarily post together. And I
yeah.
feel like that was the only way that I could get myself to do that. So I think it's just scary, and we all second guess ourselves every single time. That's how
Oh,
I feel.
every single time. And I think there is a lot to be said, for the people who just do it, to quote Nike. Um, and it really does ring true when you have an accountability partner, or however that looks for you, Meg, with you having a group, and then with Santi having that sort of like stamp of approval from her mom. And I remember speaking to one of my buddies who is really, really close to me, and he said if you don't do it, what happens? And I had no response for him. And I'm really good at having a response to things. Um, and I said, huh, well, I'm stumped on that one. And he was like, exactly. So just do it, get it done. And literally the only time that you can make a decision as to where to go from there is when you have done it and you get the feedback, or there's fallout, or there's whatever. So I think that's really just my mantra these days. Except, I mean, outside of the fact that I'm a huge Nike fan, and I say that to myself all the time. Um, that's the reason. the reason.
Hey, that makes sense. I think like part of this is also really relevant to the product role. So Santi and I actually we talk to a lot of more junior, entry level, even aspiring PMs, and a lot of them share that same mindset of like being heavily in that imposter syndrome space. And all of them think that it's just them. And I always try to reiterate like, me too. A VP over here too. Your boss too. We all don't know what we're doing. I guarantee if you go to your boss, they're also saying, do that. And in the back of their head, they're saying, well, did I make the right decision? Because we all are second guessing ourselves in the product space. And I'm curious, like being someone senior in the product space, well, what would you say to those associate PMs, aspiring PMs who might listen to this episode that are wondering if it's just them?
You're not that special. I know, I'm so sorry to be blunt, but you see, for better or worse, human beings are incredibly selfish, right? And that selfishness does translate to things like this. So when you think about it, what makes you think that the universe or God or whatever you want to blame, whatever force, has chosen you specifically to go through imposter syndrome? Really? Right? You're not that special, but you are. So get it done. That's what I would
There you
say.
go.
That's the podcast
Yeah,
right there,
that was
folks.
it.
That's where we're ending it. That's love it.
I would say that I say that to anybody listening to this right now because it's what was said to me. Not well, the person who said this to me was actually a lot less blunt, but I'm saying it bluntly because it's what I need. So I don't do well with coddling, and I don't do well with ambiguity in my job, sure, but ambiguity in the way of beating around the bush and not saying it as it is. I am a straight shooter through and through, and I need very, very direct feedback. So I'm saying this to you, whoever is listening right now, as I would have it said to me and as I would like it said to me. So yeah, imposter
Totally.
syndrome is very, very common. And I think to a degree, we've all been there. But the cost of not doing it is really, really expensive. And it is often, as a matter of fact, that's not true. I would actually go out on a limb and say that it is always the pricier option. Like not doing something is always the pricier option because you have no data. You
So
can't,
true.
you know what I mean?
Hey everyone, it's Santi popping in real quick to talk about Prodfolio. As we know, storytelling is a massive part of product management, but sometimes we struggle to tell our own. Meg and I are no exception, and after having many conversations with other product people, we noticed a trend. Lots of other PMs struggle to tell their story too. So like this podcast, Meg and I set off to help close this gap we were seeing, which is where Prodfolio comes in. Prodfolio is a portfolio building tool that helps product managers tell their story in a way that hiring managers are actually interested in seeing, all in a fraction of the time as other methods. Show your work, own your impact. Link in the description.
That's so true. No, you're totally right. I feel like we just do it. Just do it.
God,
Just
Nike
give
is getting so much out of this right now. It's just not okay. It's not okay. Oh my God.
I want to like pull it back to a little bit about what you said though, even just like what you just said about ambiguity. The role of product management has so much ambiguity. So I guess I would ask you like what's kept you in product for so long?
I'm a masochist, I guess. Um, I think I think that's an interesting question because I genuinely thrive on pressure and not necessarily knowing what's next. That is if I had to sum my life up in one sentence, that's what it would be. I have never known what's next. I plan and but I find that when I over plan and when I over analyze, because I'm quite an overthinker, Stanzi has gotten this from our conversations, and I overthink and I overanalyze and I scrutinize every single thing. There are merits to that in product, and there are applicable situations where you need to do that. But honestly, I just kind of love going in head first and saying, all right, let's see. With evidence, with my eyes wide open, etc. I'm not a lunatic. I'm a masochist, but I'm not a lunatic.
It's so funny that you described it that way, because I always tell people that like the best way to describe me is like that Elmo fire emoji and just like thrive in chaos.
Yes, exactly. Or the dog in the kitchen. Violet's
where everything's on fire. It's like, this is fine.
Drinking his coffee, just like, it's fine.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
It's product people. That's what we like.
Because for me, I think if the world is on fire, there's so many opportunities. That sounds so bad, but it's true. And there's something. So the only way I think product people will really truly relate to this is when you think about the decisions you have to make, whether it's releasing a feature, not releasing a feature, whatever that might be. Again, the costs is what you need to start to do some math here, right? And that's what it is for me at the end of the day, is doing the math and figuring out what formula to go with. Is it that we're going with the formula of not, or the formula of going, yeah, we're gonna get this done? And I didn't learn those lessons from product though. I learned those lessons from being a business owner. Because as a business owner, ruthless prioritization is literally your best friend. Because it's, do we have money to do X thing or Y thing? And most of the time, X or Y probably equal weight in terms of, the gravity of the situation when you think about it psychologically. But yeah, as a business owner, I've had to make some really tough calls. And I've never run a very large company, by the way. And that's the difference, I think, because I think sometimes, running, the larger and larger your business gets, sometimes you can be a bit removed from things. But looking at your people in the eye every single day and being responsible for them and their livelihoods, yeah, teaches you and sobers you up real quick. So I count my lucky stars for having learned those lessons really, really early on, and yeah, in quite dramatic fashion sometimes in business.
I don't even know if I can ask any other questions at that point. That was just such a real thing that came out. You're right though. The gravity of that situation's insane. I think it takes a special type of person to do really any role if you think about it. But it's like that business owner.
It's tough.
Heavy.
It's sobering.
Yeah.
You see that a lot when it comes to certain product roles too. So there's this space where it's when when companies are hiring where they don't want founders because they see that as being too experienced. But then in product roles specifically, sometimes you'll see being a former founder as a requirement for roles because they want that business mindset. And so I think that it's a fantastic perspective that you have in a product role, to have that business perspective that I think we almost need more of in the product space. And I think I saw this LinkedIn post yesterday. It was a perfect example of product manager A would describe their quarter as putting out 4 new features, and product manager B would talk about conversion rates, revenue driven, talk about more of the numbers. and we put out 4 new features because one's business minded and one's not. And I think that's where you see a huge difference in a product manager, is having business minded or a business mind versus not having a business mind. And sometimes it's a learned skill over time, but having that foundation already, game changer.
I would go as, I'm anything but a typical product person. I think that that's very evident. And the article I released yesterday, actually, funny enough, is about product as a business function and why it's not taken seriously as a business function in a lot of spaces, in a lot of industries, in a lot of companies. And it is, there was, and I believe the wave is still there. It's kind of quieted down to an extent now, but product came in as this new sexy thing. It's like, oh yeah, well, all the tech boys are doing it, and Silicon Valley, everybody's doing it down there, so we need to do it too. And product, I think, did not settle. The foundation of it, I'm talking en masse here, for companies very rapidly adopting it, it didn't settle into a place where everybody understood what exactly it is, how it serves a business. And so you have a lot of vanity when it comes to products. Feature releases and, user stories. And frankly speaking, you know, I don't care how your user stories are written. I mean that don't come to me and show me a user story. I don't care. That's not going to move. It's not going to move me, make me feel excited. What I want to know, however, is the revenue per user you're expecting off of the back of this feature released. Like, that's what I want to know. I want to know, if you need X amount of build time, how fast can we book revenue? That's what I want to know. And I feel, I know that this is written in the build trap, and exceptional book, by the way. I think Christina Perry is her name. I hope I didn't get that wrong. Melissa Perry, sorry. Yep. Exceptional book. And it talks about a lot of that. And I always got frustrated, in my sort of earlier days, when I would, go in with this beautiful presentation and start talking about, oh my God, yeah, features and this and this and this. And then nobody's in the room. When you write something, or when you're really, really proud of something, and then you're just like, yeah, look at me. And then everybody's just kind of like, oh my God, or it's just not landing. A comedian's told a bad joke and it's crickets. And I never understood it, because I was operating off of the premise of, but this is the job you hired me for. However, the two ships passing in the night, unfortunately, is that businesses a lot of the time don't understand how to articulate the purpose of products. And so this is like misalignment constantly. It's like, oh, okay. We both want the same things, but we're going about it in completely different ways. And I don't know how to communicate how I'm going about my way. And then you don't know how to communicate how you're going about your way. And then we're just very frustrated with each other.
Yeah.
And then as the executive, I'm sitting there going, well, product is a waste of time. But it isn't, right? So you're right, Meg. That's how we need to start thinking about things. And the founder's mindset, and let me be super clear because this really grinds my gears, not the mini CEO mindset. That's not what we need. You're not a CEO. You don't have the authority that the CEO has. So let's get that out of the way. What you can and should be operating as, however, is a founder, is a business owner. You should be operating as if the bank account that belongs to the company is tethered to your personal bank account. Every single move that you make needs to be in the best interest of 3 areas: your customers, the business, and your team. Period.
I love that.
Everything else is noise.
I cannot wait to clip this. I cannot wait to clip this and send that to everybody and their mom.
Everything else is noise.
So good. So good, my friend. That's the thing too. Because I'm guilty of this too. Early PM days, it's all about like features, and like we're too deep in the weeds with the features. And
We
like
all are. Yeah.
Yeah. Like way too deep into it. But as I've matured as like a product person, I start asking more of the questions of like, okay, well, what's the actual outcome of this? Where's this tying into strategy? Where's the product strategy tying into the business strategy? Where is all this rolling up into? What direction are we going in? And that's how I was able to kind of benchmark myself at least a little bit in terms of my growth through my product
Mm-hmm.
career is
Mm-hmm.
going from, well, we got to ship this and do this and blah blah blah. And like, obviously, yes, you got to think about the features you're shipping because there
Mm-hmm.
is a user
Yeah.
at the end of that that's going to be using it. But
Mm-hmm.
what outcome are we trying to drive from
That's
that?
right.
And is it going to actually be smart for users, business, teams, etc.? And those are the
That's
questions we
right.
have to start asking.
Yeah, that's
100%.
right. Yeah, and I think the only thing that and companies, like I said, this is a structural problem. And it's not one party's fault or the other party's fault. This isn't what that's about. This, however, is about addressing blind spots. And we can't address the blind spots unless there is a sort of meeting of the minds when it comes to what are the gaps in your knowledge as an executive, right? Do you actually understand why you've implemented this product thing, this product function? I mean, I've heard so many different, like, I will say derogatory references to product. It's like, oh, the product people or oh, those, it's the boys in the basement is the worst. I've heard a CEO refer to who became my team. And I thought, well, how do you expect to get success from your platform if you are not in communication with the people building your platform? I don't understand. And oh yeah, they live in the matrix. Oh my God, he used to say that all the time. It stressed me out. I was like, well, you either get into the matrix with them or go and find something else to build that you understand. I don't, and you can relate to these people. So I think for me, it's, can you imagine like building a house and not having like conversation with your construction team? Like what?
I feel
The
like that's just
anxiety.
like so disconnected. It's so
Yeah.
disconnected. And I think part of that is just like they don't want accountability. And so it's
No,
like,
they
oh, well,
don't.
we could just blame the boys in the basement.
That's right. Well, because if product starts becoming accountable to revenue per user, product might have to get into the conversation about pricing. And that's not necessarily going to be a fun time for your CFOs and your CROs and and your sales guys. So what do we want here? That's my big question to companies whenever I'm talking to anybody. Frankly speaking, sometimes I shoot my mouth off because I need people to understand that there is better. I'm like, if you don't know how to do better, fine, I can excuse it. But if you know better, why aren't you doing better is my question. And yeah, so yeah, I think that the state of affairs is really that we need to kind of like just pull the curtain back a little bit and have conversations um, more openly and on both sides.
A lot of ICs might be in the middle of that, right? They might be in the middle of that disconnected, disjointed. Maybe they're the boys in the basement
Mm,
and they don't have any say in pricing, but they're still being expected to execute, and maybe they're blamed when the product doesn't look the way it's expected to look.
yeah.
How are they supposed to deal with that if they don't have anyone advocating for them at that table for pricing or for what the product's supposed to look like? What's your advice?
It's tough. And it's so incredibly nuanced because depending on the company, depending on the size of the company, depending on the knowledge or the lack thereof that the people in the seats of authority have, true authority, not influence disguised as authority. Um, those conversations have to be handled really delicately, lest you undermine the people who write your checks, right? Um, I think in some environments, it's a lot easier to broach that subject. Startups, for example, pretty small teams, things like that. I'm not saying, by the way, that influence isn't important. It is. And because I think that it actually lends itself to acquiring more things with honey than vinegar. So the more influential you are, great. But the thing is, I think those conversations need to be had with a lot of evidence. And it will not be a one-time thing. This is the right thing to do. Let's get it done. It'll almost always be very iterative and not necessarily quick. Again, depending on the business, the size, how old it is, who's at the top. So I would implore people to do a bit of an audit. Do one on your own. Don't tell anyone. I would just do it on your own, because the thing is, you need to figure out if this is about your feelings or if it's about objectively what's happening in the business. And if you can, and you'll very quickly be able to find the evidence for that if it is. And then sort of chart your plan from there, because it's not enough to complain. It's not enough to say, oh, this sucks and we don't like it and we could be doing so much better. Everybody can say that. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, do you have the evidence to support why it's bad, and why it needs to be improved? And again, relate that back to revenue or loss of it. Relate it back to customers and how they feel. Relate it back to the team. And I want to be clear, not everything is about money, but everything's about money.
When you look at, I've thought about this too, right?
Brass tacks.
Yeah. When you look at it, a lot of it can really be tied back to money.
It really can.
Some way, shape, or form.
You can, I mean, you can go have philosophical conversations with your friends about this if you want to. There's no place for it in the workplace. Okay. So yeah, we can argue about all those different things, and I don't know, go talk to your therapist about that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really have, it's inappropriate to talk about the fact that everything's about money. Just use that as your superpower, because that's the leverage. So quantify everything and say how much money is being left on the table as a result of XYZ thing. That's how you do that. So yeah, to summarize that, run an audit by yourself and then get it sort of corroborated with another team member if you can, a trusted one. Preferably somebody maybe a little bit higher than you. They don't necessarily need to be in your department. And then, really, really start trying to quantify things and find an in to have those conversations, initiate them, and then take an iterative approach and start. You can't change everything in a day. So start changing little tiny things. Look for small wins, because that's what it is, right? The proof's in the pudding. So if you start looking for small wins and achieving those things, eventually it's going to catch on, because again, money, right? So everybody's going to go, and hopefully it all sort of culminates into a big, a bigger conversation about changing things structurally or operationally or whatever the case may be. Thank you.
I'm so glad she's here. She's just got so many things to talk about, and I love it. I love it. And I do kind of want to peel back a little bit too. Obviously, you're a very seasoned leader, and as we've talked about, there's good and bad in product, and leaders have those good and bad days too. So there's times where things are kind of falling apart. It might be a deadline, or it might be like your team's lacking motivation. There could be some alignment struggles, things like that. What helps you find your balance again? And how do you navigate those kind of tough situations as a product leader?
I'm going to be very, very candid and transparent. I have had so many struggles with handling when things are going wrong, when they feel out of my control, because I am a fixer, right? That's my nature. And being in a position where you almost can't fix or don't have the tools or all the information or whatever, and then there are compounding effects of other people being involved in those things and then feeling those effects as well. I have had my, not so proud of moments where I've just shut down. And I have done so much work to overcome that part of my, I guess, I don't know, leadership flaw or whatever you want to call it. Um, and one of the ways in which I have done that is empathy. And I don't mean to sound woo woo about it, but I stopped thinking about myself and how this is making me feel like, oh, I'm feeling like a failure, or I don't have all the answers. And so, you know, because that is very selfish. And I'm not saying it's not valid, but it also really, really puts blinders on you, and you stop thinking about how other people are being affected by this. And I started really, really empathizing with where everybody in the situation is, because I think, unfortunately, what happens with companies and organizations, we think of them as these entities, right? But they're human led entities. And so at the end of the day, if you walk out of the building, and when, there's nobody in the Google building, it's just a building. Um, Without the people, there's no Google, right? Well, maybe with AI, that might be, but I'm just saying. Yes. No, no, no. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah. And so at the end of the day, for me, starting to think about the people and how they're being affected, and that's everybody. Again, it's customer, it's, stakeholder, whatever. And then figuring out how we solve these problems together, and also being open with people when there are tough things that are happening. Sometimes, as a leader, and I'm pretty sure both of you can relate to this, you don't always know what to share and what to hold back. And so it's like, I will just carry all of this by myself. I think as women, we do that as well. It's just like, oh, it's fine, I'll hold it, right? But opening up the conversation and sometimes letting people know, look, this thing is happening and I have no idea. Articulate it how you want to, but I have found bringing things to the table and being very open about where we are, and when stuff is going badly, you actually find that a lot of the time your team surprises you by rallying and by going, oh, okay, I can start to think about XYZ thing. And then you have options, and the more options you have, the better your decision quality at the end of the day will be. And so for me, I think that's what I've started to lean into a lot more, is really, really meeting people where they are in terms of how a situation that we are all experiencing collectively is affecting us individually, and then figuring out how to move forward with them and what is in the best interest of the team, of the business, of the customers. Because at the end of the day, that's really all we're here for.
That was a good note, is the human piece of this, right? Because I think
Yeah.
so many of us can get caught up in what we're doing and what we're trying to do. Sometimes we forget the things that we're working on, even if it's with like someone we might not be seeing eye to eye with or something. It's another human. We all
Hmm.
have the same mission, we all have the same goal. We just have different ways of achieving it
Yeah.
in our brains. And that's where like I say achieving it, thinking of how we could achieve it. And I just
Hmm.
think that sometimes that can be overlooked. So I really like that you mentioned that, because it prompts us to take that step back and be like, I know I've got my thoughts and experiences, and they're valid. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean we're going to be right for this situation. This person has thoughts and experiences. They're valid. Might not be, but come to alignment. There's another person across from you. They have feelings. They have things they like, things they do. They're a human. They're a human.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be hard to see when you're in the thick of these tricky situations.
Oh, yeah.
Percent love that you touched on that. And I guess my follow-up question to that too, because now that we've kind of seen the leader POV, what would you say to those, like, I see product managers and folks that are kind of stuck in these tricky situations? How do you encourage them if they're feeling burnout or if they're feeling weary? And how do you help, like, what would you say to them to help them kind of reset and get back into their groove?
Oof. Invest in a punching bag. Um,
She's like actually
Honestly.
very serious, people like just,
Uh, it's what helped me at the end of the day. I mean, I think sometimes what happens with us, right? And there's an all-consuming energy about products, and rightfully so, but also that allows no room for thinking about anything else or attacking a problem from any other angle, or looking at it through any other lens. And I think that's one of the things that really, really does fuel the burnout and the getting to the sort of end of your rope. And for me, I started to study. I'm quite the student, I will say. But I became a student after I dropped out of college. So, that's quite interesting. So now I'm like, I need to like really, really sort of like voraciously learn about everything, because my biggest fear in this world is not knowing. I don't like not understanding things. I don't like to, like I said, be in a room where something is happening and I feel like it's happening to me rather than being a part of it. So I always want to know. And so I think one of the things that has helped me to really put things in perspective when it comes to product is looking at different angles and trying to sort of find new perspectives, because burnout is something that happens when you go and don't stop, when you don't, find other things that have purpose in your life, because your job is not your purpose. I'm sorry. There might be people who believe that, but I'm not one of them. Your job is what you do. And if you find a purpose in what you do, meaning if the job is simply the mechanism, that's fine. But the purpose is I get to do XYZ thing. I am a doctor. That is my job. But through my job, I get to save lives. That's the purpose, not going in and, cutting people open. So for me, it's really about looking at different perspectives and utilizing the strengths that I have in different ways. I found a lot of perspective in coaching and mentoring, and I never thought I had anything to tell anybody, but someone randomly called me last year or the year before now, I think, and asked for my advice. And I thought, all right, no problem. And I mean, friends and colleagues ask for advice, but I did not know this person. And I said, okay, no problem. And she said, do you mind if we sit down? And I said, sure. And I thought, what on earth do I have to tell this woman, right? And a lot of the things she was experiencing, I was either experiencing at that time or had already experienced it. And I mean the bad stuff. And I thought, well, we left that call with her saying, I did not know that I wasn't the only one. To your point earlier, Meg, yeah, it's not an isolated incident. And you are not that special to think that the universe has somehow just conspired to present you with all this turmoil. So when it comes to burnout, that is a really, really clear sign that you are not focusing on other things that fulfill you and that make you feel alive. And that's what you need to go do. Really go find something else and talk to your team and it doesn't have to be your boss, but talk to someone above you, because I think learning from people who are above you or further than you, or whatever the unit of measurement is, it really does help. It helps to put things in perspective of, oh yeah, they went through this too, or oh yeah, they, attacked this problem this way. And so those are some of the tools that I have utilized and continue to utilize. Whenever I want to do something new, I find someone who's already doing it, and not just doing it well, excellently. And I either find a way to get in touch, still holding out for Emma Greed to reach back out, but I either find them or I find a piece of content that they've produced or something. I read their books, I read their articles, or like, like I said, when I can actually physically sit down and have a conversation with them, I do. And I ask the questions. What have you done? How have you done it? That kind of thing. And I don't want the sort of cutesy responses. I ask respectfully, of course, really tough questions, because when I'm going through something, I want to know, how did you do that? Give me the steps. So yeah, product is hard, guys. It's hard. And I think we just need to start acknowledging that now. Once we've acknowledged it, we can talk about how to not avoid the hard things, but to navigate the hard things, because hard things are necessary. So how do we navigate it? And yeah, so those are, hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Because you touched on several key things in there, right? And like your ending note really stood out to me about it is hard and we need to
Yeah.
discuss the hard.
Yeah.
They can't just not do the hard things, right? There are going to be situations where the hard stuff comes up. It's
Yeah.
just life and we need to
Yeah.
address it 100%.
Yeah.
Meg, I'll flip it to you though, because I've been talking for a hot minute.
No, I was just thinking of like the same topic. Like we need to talk about it. It's funny. Someone told me they actually sent me a LinkedIn message the other day. I asked them how they were doing. It was literally I asked, like gave them permission to tell me how they were doing. And I
Oh,
think they sent me like a message that was like that long. So not super long, not super in depth. And they gave me some information about how they were doing, and it wasn't positive. And they're also a fellow PM. And after that message, they sent a follow up message that was like, I'm really sorry that it seems like I'm venting. I'm just really overwhelmed right now. And I followed the message up like, I invited you to tell me how you were doing. And I don't think you should be apologizing. I want you to understand that, like, we need people in our corner. We need to be able to talk to people and tell people when we're not okay. I don't know if it was our generation. I don't know if it's how we were raised, where we were told we need to keep things in. I really don't know. But we need to know that people are in our corner. And I feel like more and more we aren't okay talking about the bad stuff. And I think we need to set an example with people where we talk about the bad stuff and we say when we're not okay, even if it's about our work, because sometimes work's not great. Sometimes we have a
gosh, yeah.
bad launch. I don't know how we want to describe that, but I feel like the more leaders that talk about it, the more people that are publicly talking about it, the more when people send you a LinkedIn message, they don't feel guilty, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could acknowledge how incredibly important what you just said is, because the only time that I really, really find myself respecting a leader, a public figure, whoever it is, and friends, etc., and people in my professional life as well, is when they are not only candid about what they're going through, and I'm not suggesting that people need to overshare. That's not what I'm saying, because thank God knows we have enough of that. But I think that when they're really, really truthful and honest about the things that didn't work out, and they speak just as confidently about the things that bombed, that failed, that for me gets my attention, and I go, all right, I'll hear you, I'll listen, I will engage, because failure is such a constant, because it's a part of life. Yeah, failure is an inevitability, but we treat it like it's this dirty, let's be super hush hush about it and let's not talk about it. And I don't understand why. And I think, unfortunately, what that's done in business, in product, and in almost every single facet of life, it's created this unrealistic threshold for people. And you see it on social media, you see it, you see it everywhere, where it's like, I don't need to talk about the failures. I'm not going to talk about the failures. We're just going to cut and edit and clip. And this is all going to be so beautifully done. And we will not see any of the bad stuff. We will not see that this one clip that's 15 seconds long actually took me 8 hours to do because I had to go over and over and over and over again. I have a friend who's an influencer, and it was the thing for me was standing behind the camera one day when she was randomly filming. I was waiting for her to go to lunch, and I was annoyed because I was like, why is this taking so long? And she was filming something, and the thing for me was the contrast between what the camera saw and cue cards and this and that product and this and this. And I was like, whoa. If only they knew. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what life is like a lot of the time now. It's like, this one tiny square is what everybody sees, but then everything else around it is absolute chaos. And there's a lot of messy stuff that happened, but we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to leave it. And I think it's very unrealistic.
100%. And that actually, I can speak from personal experience. That played heavily in my product career in my early days. I wasn't exposed to enough people talking openly about their failures. So when I inevitably
Yeah.
screwed up, because it's going to happen, the whole world, it went whoosh. It just like took me
Yeah.
out. Because I just didn't especially as a new product manager, you're always trying to like prove yourself and things like that. And you want to do a good job. We all want to do a good job in what we do, but because I wasn't exposed to like people talking confidently and openly about their failures and like what they learned and stuff like that at the time, I didn't really know how to handle it. So that is one thing I am actually grateful for
Yeah.
LinkedIn, is there's a lot of folks that are very real, raw, and honest about what worked for them and what didn't work for them. Like I've had people say like, I've seen posts where people are like, yeah, I used to lead a team of 10 people and I was fired because I did a horrible job. And I'm just like, kudos to you, first of all, for owning up to that. And thank you, because
Yeah.
we're all going to mess up at some point. And we like need to be able to talk about that. Like it's not nice to have at this point. Mistakes are part of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, don't mean to be cliche here, but there is something to be said about the power in the statement failing forward. It really, really is something that stuck with me when I first heard it, and then I read the work about failing forward, because I was like, oh yeah, this is actually an opportunity. It's not a done deal. It's not the end of the thing where it's like, okay, well, you failed and that's it. Failure a lot of the time is, you think about it like how scientists do. Scientists work every single day to break things. So to break it, developers stress test things. We do things to see how strong it is. And when you go to the gym and you work out, you are testing your body. You are pushing it to the limit. I'm surprised it took me this long to mention the gym. But he goes to the gym and thinks, oh yeah, I'm not gonna talk about the fact that I tried to deadlift 250 pounds today and it just wasn't quite there yet. You were doing 225 and now you're doing 250. Nobody is going to look at you and say that you're not strong. Are you kidding me? So that's, I hope that this sort of unconventional way of thinking is going to be of service to people listening, because I think sometimes we stick to the standard script a little bit too much and it becomes dogmatic, and then we don't really have much room for inviting new ways of thinking. And that's, as a product person who was very, very unconventionally thrown into this industry, I have found strength in thinking differently, and I have found massive success in thinking differently.
I personally feel like, as someone who was listening a lot to your insights,
Thank
I think
you.
that it's going to be really impactful for anyone who listens to it. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you
And
so much.
is there anything we didn't You didn't share that you want to share? Because we always try to ask our guests if there's anything you want to like leave on or anything you want to share at the very end. Please, like this is your moment.
No, I think I'm really humbled. I have to say, I'm really humbled being here, speaking with both of you, two women in product that so Santi is the one who introduced me to you, Meg, and I did stalk you, obviously, in a healthy way. And I was like, oh my God, she's amazing. And so I'm really, really happy to be here with the both of you, talking about things that are not necessarily that comfortable for us as product people to talk about all the time or share. And I think as two female leaders in this space, I'm pretty blown away constantly by Santi specifically when we have conversations. She doesn't quite know how talented she is. And then we talk, and then she's like, yeah, I just don't know. And I'm just like, it's just because you're not hearing yourself. So I'm really, really happy to be here and so proud of both of you and what you're doing. And I think you're gonna really change a lot of shit next year. So looking
We
forward to seeing
appreciate it.
that.
Thank
Not
you
me
so
about to
much.
cry.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing that. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh my goodness, you are the best, Alex. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on. And again, like Mike said, sharing your insights because that's the whole point of our podcast is to ultimately help people. This is kind of like product work in and of itself in a way, right? Like everything, if you treat it like a product, this is one of the ways that we practice that. And I know that our listeners love it. We often will get people being like, hey, this episode was so helpful. Love this part, stuff like that. And I think you covered so many things, even the uncomfortable stuff. I think will offer reassurance in some ways to people that maybe weren't comfortable talking about it with anyone else, but they could hear it and understand and be like, okay, yeah, it's not just me. And I think that's the positive that we're ending on here ultimately
Agreed.
is we can talk about the negative stuff and it's okay. Everyone's got a flavor of it and things get better. That you learn, you move, you grow. And all the mistakes that I thought were going to take me out and kill my career, I just learned from them and it was okay.
Right? It's not that bad.
Yeah, we're gonna
It's
do it
not
and it's
that
gonna be
bad.
fine.
It's gonna be
Yes.
fine. Thank you both so much. This has been the highlight of my week.
Thank
Don't tell the
you so
others.
much. Like this is awesome. We're so thankful to have you here. And just for our listeners, I'm going to link, I believe, Alex's Substack or
And
Substack and
Yeah, I mean,
Medium.
yeah, sure.
She's been very humble about her
Sometimes
writing. Okay,
yeah.
well, she's been very
more
humbled
starts
about her
from there.
writing, but we will be linking something in the show notes. So we talked about it a little bit earlier in the episode. Please take a look at them because it sounds like it's definitely worth reading. I haven't had a chance to look at it myself, but by the time you watch this episode, I will have. So take a look. Thank you all so
Thank
much
you
for
so
listening.
much.